Hello, good afternoon. This is Mrs. Chislom Lightbourne.
Hello,
How are you, Miss Chislom?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, that's wonderful. Today we'll be talking to you about your methods of classroom management. What methods of physical classroom management do you use? And physical classroom management could range from the way you arrange your classroom, the way you seat students, and so on.
Okay, for me, classroom management is planning and arranging the class. Physical setup, that's what you're referring to, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That plays a major part in, or for me, it's an essential teaching skill, i.e., setting up the classroom. So as a teacher, I permit orderly movement. I try to minimize distraction, and I try to make efficient use of all the space available in the classroom. And when I do that, it creates, it would create space that would provide reflective learning goals, and help me to achieve my learning goals, or even achieve a specific objective for that day. Or so in terms of how I set up my classroom, all of my lesson plans reflect my learning goals based on how my classroom is set up as well. I also take into consideration the personality, the interest, and the age of the student who are sitting in the room. And I try to create the right environment or the right setting that will provide comfort and allow for productive learning environment for all of them. I find that this technique, once I have it well organized, it would encourage students, and when I say it would encourage students, students will be self-motivated. They will become more self-disciplined, and of course they'll become more responsible. And as a result of that, all of the learning goals are often obtained.
Okay, so that's enough for physical. What about proactive classroom management? What do you do to prevent disruptions and interruptions during your lessons or classroom sessions?
Even for teaching adults, I find, and when I say adults, I talk in grades, okay, adult COB, but I refer to teaching grades 7 to 12. I can use the same technique with grade 10 to 12 that I would use for grade 7 to 9. So for grade 7 to 9, I have to create, in terms of getting them to listen, I have to create short teaching sessions, shorter teaching, like make the modules shorter to get one specific concept taught. So at the end of that concept, instead of allowing, if you to try to do too much, like a full 40 minutes or 30 minutes, 35 minutes, you may lose the students. So you do it in 15 minutes, short bursts. And during that time, you go slower, right? And it would often require like thoughtful consideration of everybody in the room. But it prevents disruptive behavior. And of course, at the same time, it allows you to have greater control. And again, the teaching or the learning goal will be obtained, because by you going slower, taking shorter bursts, creating maybe even a small worksheet that they could quickly do, or some physical exchange where they do something hands-on. Remember, my area is science. So if they could do something, or I could have them do something hands-on, or I could do a demonstration, it would break the monotony, and more information will be retained as a result, especially if they get involved in the lesson learned, instead of me just standing up there and talking. Okay, so when it's more interactive, you have less distractions, you have you won't have disruptive behavior. And another thing you have to employ too, like even within the lesson, if you're going to ask a question, ask it after you would have taught a concept. So I would often teach a concept and then ask questions. And it's at this time I introduce rewards, right? So students paying attention because they want to answer the question because they want the reward. And when you do that, you have to transform the learning environment. And so you have a more cohesive group of students who get more information, who listening, who retaining, who are able to translate that information to answer questions. So you take them through all the different levels where they analyze, they could synthesize, they could transform, they could use the information in any way at all, because they get to learn and retain the concept.
Okay, so what about the different personalities? Teachers have different methods of setting up their classes based on personalities. What would you do, like, if you had a bunch of students that were extroverts and then you had some that were introverts? Would you bring the extroverts closer to you, or would you mix them in with the introverts?
I try to integrate, because remember, education is to transform learners. All right. So if you could bring a person who will not normally talk into a group, but maybe a talkative person, not talkative, like excessively talkative, but someone who's more interactive, you could bring that person out of their shell. And very often it's just a matter of the individual or the student being a bit shy and not knowing how to socialize. So when you're dealing with different personalities, you have to consider integrating them in such a way that it don't change who they are, but it helps them to bring out new characteristics or to enhance their skills or their learning skills through more interactions again. And it will go right back to the way you talk about proactive learning. If you have these different personalities in the class, again, when you create your space, you create space based on personality, interest, and age of the students. So all of those things are taken into consideration.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Chislom.